I don't know if this is so much productive anymore. Like, I asked a question, and so it feels like a little bit that you're rambling.
And you said, I'd be very careful putting words into someone's mouth.
Well,
and
also because I'm being recorded.
Exactly
I also don't know where this videotape is going.
I'm surprised that would upset you. I'm like genuinely surprised that would upset you. And I'm sorry. And I think that's probably as far as we should go with this conversation, because if it's causing, the goal would be only to create goodwill and to...
I only want a dialogue.
To treat people with respect.
It kind of felt like there was though. So anyways, I know.
How are you? I'm Rabbi Shoff. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Isabel. Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure.
So you're Orthodox?
I'm an Orthodox rabbi.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure.
Why do you believe in the oral tradition apart from the Torah itself?
What a smart question. It's an excellent question. You know, in any language or in any form of communication, a text is just a text. Mm-hmm. And as an example, the words for in the beginning God created. Mm-hmm. You know, the first words of the Bible. In Hebrew, they're Bereshit bara Elokim, which if you'd like, you can translate as Bereshit created God. You can do whatever you really want with the text, and you can twist meanings, which means that there is some sort of presumed understanding of how we're using language and what we're talking about in any conversation. So there are many examples of this, but when it says in the Old Testament, guard the Sabbath day to make it holy. Mm-hmm. So the Orthodox Jews believe God was trying to say something to a group of people who understood what he meant, and he used their language. So that could mean post guards near a sign that says Sabbath and declare every 8 minutes that it's holy. That sign, right? It could be anything. What does it mean? The concept of an oral tradition is not so much that there was some sort of hidden tradition, but it's that when God spoke, he meant something specific. And if he didn't explain it in the text, then it was explained by context to those people. So I don't know if you know the Jewish tradition to wear tefillin, to wrap. So everywhere.
It comes from Exodus.
That's right. So that's very good. Back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. The tefillin are black and they're square, and they are wrapped on the arm with leather straps. Who says that? It says nothing about that in the Bible, but it was not ambiguous. So that's the concept of the oral Torah really means, on the simplest level, that when God said something, whatever the Torah said, it had a meaning, and that meaning was preserved. So it's interesting because you'll find the Talmud has all kinds of debates. Is it this way? Is it that way? There's never a debate of maybe tefillin are round. It's always about minutia. Isn't that interesting? In other words, the major topics are well understood. We know Sabbath is every 7 days. We know what all these things are. And little details about is it observed exactly like this or exactly like that are always minutia in the grand scheme of things. It's not, there was a guy named Moses, others say there wasn't. You never have that level of...
Yeah.
Does that make sense as like the most basic? But I get the sense that you know more than what I just said. Yes. And that your question is more sophisticated. So fill me in.
Well, you believe in 626 or 13 commandments, right? As Orthodox rabbi or Jews. What do you think is the point of fulfilling the law? And do you think that you could fulfill the law?
So I believe that if God gives instructions to people how to live, then that's the best way to live.
I agree.
It refines you and it elevates you. I don't believe that there's any source in the Old Testament that expects perfection from human beings. There's no source in the Old Testament that talks about the concept of salvation.
If that was true, then why would God give out commandments if the point was not to try and be perfect?
That's a good question. I married somebody who I love with all my heart, and I do not expect her to be perfect. I never expected her to be perfect, and I think it'd be unreasonable to expect her to be perfect. Her trying her best to be a good mother and a good spouse and a good friend is more than enough. In fact, it's deeply meaningful. Computers and machines are perfect. Nature is perfect by definition because it doesn't have free choice. Human beings being given free choice, and I don't know if you know this, but according to Jewish tradition, the sin of Adam and Eve happened within the 6 days of creation.
Yes.
Which means that it's part of the creation of the human being is weakness and flaw and sin. And that's what it means to be human. It's precious and it's beautiful. And now our job is to overcome the challenge to sin to the best that we can, to refine ourselves. It is not to be saved in some way. Judaism never taught that you have to be perfect. It spends a lot of time in the prophets about what's called teshuvah, which means repentance. and trying again and trying another time. And Christianity has a different set of beliefs, which are also, I understand, to be very sophisticated, very well thought out, but it's a completely different attitude. The way what we believe is presented is as though you've got to keep the law, but you've got to be perfect to keep the law in order to get salvation. Since no one can do that, there's now a new way.
Here, let me ask you a question then. So you give the analogy of your wife and how you're married and how your wife tries her best. So in that analogy, if your wife committed adultery, like how the Israelites on Mount Sinai committed adultery against God, God was very unpleased. And likewise, I think you as a husband would be very unpleased because that is a covenant of marriage. So if that is something to be broken, that covenant by adultery, then wouldn't you say that that covenant was never meant to be broken in the first place?
Breaking a covenant is a good question, whether or not it can be broken. It's explicit throughout the Old Testament that God will not forsake. Ki lo yitosh Hashem amo v'nachal aso lo yazav. Again and again and again, he says, I will not. Where is the divorce document that I sent to your mother, says God? So there's no such a thing. It didn't happen, according to the Old Testament.
Well, according to Moses, that Moses allowed divorce because of the hardening of their hearts in the Torah.
No. It says explicitly in the Torah, one of the 613 commandments is when a man will take a woman, this is Deuteronomy, and she will not find favor in his eyes, that there's a methodology. The Kosav L'Sefer Krisis, he writes for her a document of divorce, and he sends it to her, and she may go and marry another man. It doesn't say anything there in that text about this is because of the hardening of hearts. But even if that were true, that doesn't mean anything more to me than looking at the human condition and deciding that this is what's best, God deciding. It's one of the commandments in the Torah. I think that the human condition is that we were placed here on earth as imperfect people with a drive both to do good and a drive to sin. We do not believe that the devil is something that God lost control over or some sort of a thing. We believe that every single human being has urges within them that pull them in the wrong direction, and that those can be elevated into positive things, ultimately, either by overcoming them or sometimes even using them properly. If people didn't have any kind of desire to procreate, says the Talmud, then they wouldn't have families and they wouldn't build homes. So there's something about that same desire that's productive and good. But what I mean to say is the burden of proof is on you. If you can read through the Old Testament and find me one verse which says one must be perfect in order to achieve salvation, and then if you don't do that, you cannot have salvation, then I will need to respond and try to understand that verse. There is no such a thing.
As someone who finds the Torah extremely interesting. I've spent so much time studying the Torah. I'm definitely no expert. I'm definitely no Orthodox rabbi. So a lot of my questions come out of curiosity. So I just want to preface it with that. So as Orthodox rabbis and someone who practices Judaism, you believe in, let's just talk about the Messiah and what that means to you. Like how would you know as an Orthodox rabbi if the Messiah was here?
So I think the best formulation of it is in the work of Maimonides. I don't know if you've ever seen a quote from him, where he describes, basically he's just collecting the material from the Talmudic sources and codifying it, making it clear. But it's very, very clear that the Messiah is going to be a human being. It's very clear he's going to be a human being who has a father and a mother, and that on the male side, he is biologically back to the tribe of Judah through King David. It's very clear that what he's going to do is bring peace to the world. Real peace to the world. We do not have peace in the world right now.
What does peace mean to you?
Peace means very explicitly what it says in the prophets, that the lion will lay down with the lamb. Nations will not fight wars against one another. People will not have to be scared. Children, it says, will play on, the python's nest or whatever that is, the hole of the python, chur pesen, and on. We have very explicit, that's what it means. It's not what it means to me. It's how it was understood up to the times of Jesus and since. There has not been a change in the recorded Orthodox Judaism about the definition of the Messiah all the way back. So it's not something that we invented after the fact. Well, the Messiah came, we said, no, we don't think so. And they said, well, he'll come back again. Well, there'll be a third time. This whole thing is not something that we accepted. If God wanted to change what he had said and has a new idea or something else, I'm very comfortable with him doing that too, and reveal himself like he did to 600,000 men and their wives and children and older people and people under 20. Let's go. Reveal it again and say, now there's a new covenant. I would listen to him if he revealed himself like that, telling me that there's a few people who saw someone far away and he changed from wine into water. It already says in the book of Deuteronomy that if a prophet comes and performs signs and miracles and then says you no longer have to keep the Bible, you should not listen to that prophet, for God is testing you. So to me, that's exactly the story that's being told to me. And until someone can come with a different story, it's probably the same reasons that you don't accept the Mormon claims. That a specific man went off somewhere, found some tablets, right? I'm assuming you don't accept those claims.
Yes, I do.
So you have to know that it's identical. To me, it's basically identical. Saying, but Isaiah 53, come on. It's not convincing. If you're a Christian, I see why you would see that in Isaiah 53. But if God wanted to write somewhere in the Old Testament, hey, there's going to be a child born, and here's how it's going to work. And if he wouldn't say that a young woman would give, he would say a virgin gives birth, but he doesn't say that. He would say that the child's name is going to be Jesus, not Emmanuel, in response to a very specific thing happening.
It does say that in Isaiah.
It says in Isaiah, a young woman, ha'alma hara. The word for virgin 100% of the time is betula. There's not one place in the Old Testament where the word...
Right, but it would mean a young woman at the time would be of marriageable age, which would mean...
No, the word alma always means a young woman. Betula always means a virgin. It's 100% of the time across the Bible. It's the fact that we could have that conversation. God knows how to make things clear. When the Messiah is here, if he wants me to know he's here, he has an easy way to do it. He's God. He's infinite. He knows how to reveal himself. How did a prophet know? A prophet knew. Instead, a prophet knew. He said, well, how did they know? They knew. God knows how to make himself known. So it's to Jews, it's extremely unconvincing. And picking, Psalm 19, it doesn't say anything there. There's nothing there. My God, why are you forsaken me? Is something that tradition says that Queen Esther said when she was struggling.
Well,
and then we have questions.
Okay, well,
That's right.
I don't know if this is so much productive anymore. Like, I asked a question, and so it feels like a little bit that you're rambling. And so...
I apologize.
Thank you. Then I'm very curious about this question. Like I said, a lot of these questions are driven by curiosity. Now, I've been to Israel. I've gotten to see a lot of Orthodox rabbis. I've gotten to see both secular. I've gotten to see Ethiopian Jews. I've gotten to see a lot. What do you think about Jewish people who maybe are secular, or maybe not even secular, but end up believing other faiths, like Buddhist Jews? Because those are very real too, as someone who's Orthodox.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do I think they exist? Was that the question?
No, the question is, it is very clear that people like secular Jews or Jewish people who believe in Buddhism or other religions exist. So what do you, as an Orthodox rabbi, believe that those Jewish people should be doing?
I mean, I believe...
Do you think what they're believing or lack of
true?
belief is wrong?
I mean, not every single thing that a Buddhist person believes is wrong.
In that they're not following Judaism and the Orthodox faith.
Jewish people should keep the Torah. They should observe what God commanded the Jewish people to do. That's my belief. I'm not here to judge a specific person. I don't believe that that's something that I can do. I don't know what somebody's life experience was. I don't know what somebody understands. I don't know what they were taught, what they were exposed to. And I'm not sure, like, what do you think about Buddhist people?
I don't know. I don't know much about Buddhism.
Do you think Buddhism is true?
I personally don't.
You don't. So what do you think about, what do you think they should be doing?
Well, the question isn't really for me. The question is, as someone who's an Orthodox rabbi, someone who tells other Jewish people what they should be doing. Now I'm just a senior at UCLA.
I generally don't tell people what they should be doing. I will, if somebody asks me a question to help guide them, I will sometimes try to help them see another perspective. But I don't believe that people should just come to me and then blindly obey something that I say. I often say that to people. I'll give a class on parenting or something, and it's like, if there's anything I'm saying that doesn't make sense to you, then I don't think you should do it. I said, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, right? I'm trying my best to teach you the wisdom that it says in the Torah. And it's possible I misunderstood something. It's possible I got something wrong. So I think it's important to keep in mind always. But I think if you would answer me honestly, you would say that you think that the Buddhist person should accept Christ.
Well, I'd be careful with putting words into my mouth, respectfully.
Would you say that? Do you think that? Could I ask you yes or no? Do you think that people that are not Christian yet should accept Christ?
I think everyone is made...
Would you be willing to say yes or no to that? Or
I think everyone is made in the image of God. Now, with that, I think from the Old Testament alone, we can also see that there's the Holy Spirit. Like in Genesis 1:2, we see that the Spirit hovered over the waters of the deep. And we also see that God created a bunch of
How
things.
did you get to, you accused me before of rambling and in an angry way.
A little bit, yeah. So my whole point with that is in Genesis.
In no way am I angry at you, but that felt a little bit rambling.
Okay, my apologies.
I really asked a very direct question. That it feels like you're scrambling to avoid saying. I thought that it's a basic part of the gospel and a basic part of Christianity.
Yes, the basic
that
part
everybody should accept Jesus.
Yes. Everyone is made in the image of God, and thus everyone who is made in the image of God should believe that Jesus is the Messiah.
Do you think that if I were to say that I think Jews should observe the Torah, that's fundamentally in some way different than you saying that you think everybody should?
I also don't. It is not my stance to judge on other people. That is not my job. That is God's.
And yet you're comfortable to say that you think what God said is that people should accept Christ.
That is what is said in the New Testament.
Right, and that's something that it sounds like you believe, right?
It says in John 14:6 that Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
So when I said to you, I think if you would answer honestly, that you would say you think everyone would get through Christ. And you said, I'd be very careful putting words into someone's mouth.
Well,
and
also because I'm being recorded.
Exactly
I also don't know where this videotape is going.
I understand. Okay, there's no nefarious purposes here. I mean, we think it's productive to have honest, respectful conversations with people. I'm surprised that would upset you. I'm like genuinely surprised that would upset you. And I'm sorry. And I think that's probably as far as we should go with this conversation, because if it's causing, the goal would be only to create goodwill and to.
I only want a dialogue.
To treat people with respect.
It kind of felt like there was though. So, anyways, I never said I was upset. I just wanted to ask some very curious questions.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.